We did send a lot of mandates. The chair listed a number. I share his concerns over those, and I'll list a few others that are at the top of my list. I understand it was a big workload, but if you prioritize and address the principal concerns, particularly those that relate to safety, that'll be good progress. Flight attendant fatigue, 25 years. I mean, the FAA has recognized that fatigue is a real issue, and that, when you're dealing with safety critical personnel, pilots, we've adopted rules. When it comes to flight attendants, safety critical personnel, we haven't. The rules allow an airline to keep a flight attendant on duty for 14 hours, then you get an 8-hour break. Now it's 8 hours to get off the plane, get out of the airport, get on the shuttle, go to the hotel, maybe make a phone call, take a shower, go to bed, get up, and be back within 8 hours. Now, I don't know, maybe you get 3-4 hours sleep if you're lucky. It's well past time. And I thought we were very, very definitive and clear, and it would not be necessary to go through a lengthy rulemaking. And I'm hoping that we can expedite that in the near future. And then we have the issue of cabin evacuations. When I first came to Congress, I was aware of the Manchester crash where people died piled up like cordwood trying to get out the overwing exit. It was a survivable crash. It took me 5 years in Congress to get a rule that said we would take out and make space to get at the overwing exits. 2 years later, the industry came back with a fake study saying, oh no, that actually delays evacuations if you take those seats out. Well, we pushed back on that and they didn't put them back in. But now they're cramming in more and more and more seats, closer and closer together. People are getting bigger. And we haven't done a real safety evacuation drill in, I think, 20 years or 25 years. We're using computer simulations. I don't believe we can meet the standard anymore of 90 seconds, which has been deemed to be critical. Now, if the FAA thinks you can have 5 minutes in a survivable crash and a fire, well, then tell us that. But if you don't think that, then we have to find out whether or not the current rules accommodate a 90-second evacuation. We have a real-life example, which was the American Airlines flight in Chicago, which was a wide body. So it wasn't one of the new, really crammed-in planes, and it took them well over 2 minutes and 21 seconds to evacuate the plane, and the plane wasn't even full. So telling me that these new economy carriers that have crammed people in, so they're sitting like this, I want to get the CEOs here someday, and I'm going to get some of those seats, and I'm going to put them in them. We're going to keep them here for 4 or 5 hours and see what they think about what they're doing to people.
I won't be chairing that meeting.
Secondary cockpit barriers. Bill Lipinski, not Dan, and I were on this issue before 9/11, the vulnerability of the flight decks. And United actually installed a few barriers in 757s. I was down there visiting their maintenance facility in San Francisco once, and I said, what are that? What do you call that? And they said, oh, we call those DeFazios, because you're bugging us so much. But they didn't equip all the planes, and we had a preventable tragedy had we been able to prohibit access. Yes, we've armed the doors, and now we have flight attendants menacingly behind a cart. And it wouldn't be very hard for a person with strength and skill to vault over that cart, knock the flight attendant down, take out the pilot, and get to the flight deck. That was really, really, really clear. Now, the industry's very opposed. Now it's going to put a little more weight on the plane, and the manufacturers and the former chairman tried to say, no, we didn't mean what the law said. We meant new types. No, the law is clear. All newly manufactured airplanes will have these barriers. And again, this is being slow-walked. I see that they're, asked for another delay. They're not releasing the recommendations. We've got to get that out. Drones took me about 5 years to roll the very, very powerful model airplane lobby and the Chinese toy manufacturers to require that we could have remote ID. They had prohibited the FAA from regulating these things. Sooner or later, we're going to ingest a drone. What's going to happen? Well, we don't know. In fact, I asked the FAA 3 years ago, what happens if one of those crappy little quadcopters goes into a turbine? And they said, well, we don't know. And I said, well, maybe you should find out. We still haven't had the live test. I don't know what the delay is. But, this is very serious. And if this, the commercial drone people are all with me on this. It's like, because if we have one accident because of some jerk illegally flying a toy drone, they're all going to get grounded. And it's going to be quite a mess. So we really, really need that rule. And now I think we're not even going to see a proposed rule until December. I don't know. Is it the model aircraft people? Is it the Chinese? Who's holding this up? And then finally, foreign repair stations. We just had an incident last week of what appears to be a terrorist action on domestic soil by a domestic employee. And I have for years, again with Bill Lipinski, that's how long it's been, expressed concerns, and with Jerry Costello, about foreign repair stations. We did some visits. And, we can't do unannounced visits because the State Department says, oh, well, then they could do unannounced visits here. Who cares? We don't have anything to hide, I hope. So, and they don't do drug testing as is we required by law. They don't do alcohol, drug, and they don't do background checks. And now we're doing massive, massive amounts of maintenance overseas. This is an incredible vulnerability. Just like this guy tried to sabotage the plane there, what about someone doing a D-check down in one of these foreign repair stations? That's a way to take down a plane without having to get on board and not having to access the flight deck. So these are safety critical, potentially life-threatening rules that we need, and we need them as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now turn to Ranking Member Graves for 5 minutes for his opening.